Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Pidana Girivardhari Yasodhanandana Brajajanarandana Yasodhanandana Brajajanarandana Yamuna Tiravana Jadi Yamuna Tiravana Jadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Jana Manabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Yasodhanandana Brajajanarandana Yasodhanandana Brajajanarandana Yamuna Tiravana Jadi Yamuna Tiravana Jadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Madhava Kunjabi Adi Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivitakacharuja Astikatasi Simad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Gaur Premanandi. Change of gears. Canto 4, Chapter 2. Now, this is marked for text 30, but it's text 31, correct? 31. 4, 2, 31. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Esha Eva Hilokanam Shiva Pantha Sanatanaha Yam Purve Chando Santashtur Yat Pramanam Janardanaha Esha eva hi lokanam Shivapanta sanatanaha Yampurve chanu santastur Yat pramanam janardanaha. The Vedas give the eternal regulative principles for auspicious advancement in human civilization, which have been rigidly followed in the past. The strong evidence of this principle the strong evidence of this principle is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is Janardana, the well-wisher of all living entities. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, has claimed that he is the father of all living entities regardless of form. There are 8,400,000 different species of life forms, and Lord Krishna claims that he is the father of all. Because the living entities are parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they are all sons of the Lord. And for their benefit, because they are hovering under the impression that they can lord it over material nature, the Vedas are given to them for their guidance. Therefore, the Vedas are called Apaurushaya, for they are not written by any man or demigod, including the first living creature, Lord Brahma. Brahma is not the creator or author of the Vedas. He is also one of the living beings in the material world. Semicolon. Therefore, he does not have the power to write or speak the Vedas independently. Every living entity within the material world is subject to 4 deficiencies. This is a long purport, huh? He commits mistakes. He accepts one thing for another. He cheats. And he has imperfect senses. The Vedas, however, are not written by any living creature within this material world. Therefore, they are said to be Apaurushaya. No one can trace out the history of the Vedas. Of course, modern human civilization has no chronological history of the world or the universe, and it cannot present actual historical facts older than 3,000 years. But no one has traced out when the Vedas were written, because they were never written by any living being within the material world. All other systems of knowledge are defective because they have been written or spoken by men or demigods who are products of this material creation. But Bhagavad Gita is Apaurushaya, for it was not spoken by any human being or any demigod of this material creation. It was spoken by Lord Krishna, who is beyond the material creation. That is accepted by such stalwart scholars as Shankaracharya, not to speak of other acharyas such as Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya. Shankaracharya has accepted that Narayana and Krishna are transcendental. And in Bhagavad Gita, also Lord Krishna has established Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo Matak Sarvam Pravartate. I'm the origin of everything. Everything emanates from me. This material creation, including Brahma and Shiva, and all the demigods, has been created by him. For everything has emanated from him. He also says that the purpose of all the Vedas is to understand him. Vedaishta sarvair aham eva vedyaha. He is the original Veda Vid, or knower of the Vedas. and Vedanta Krit, the compiler of Vedanta. Brahma is not the compiler of the Vedas. Paragraph. In the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is established, Tene Brahma Hrida, the Supreme Absolute Truth, the Personality of Godhead, instructed Brahma in the Vedic knowledge through his heart. Therefore, the evidence that Vedic knowledge is free from the defects of mistakes, illusion, cheating, and imperfection is that it is spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Janardana. He, and has thus been followed from time immemorial, beginning from Brahma, the Vedic religion, or the principles of the Vedas, have been followed by the highly cultured population of India since time immemorial. No one can trace out the history of the Vedic religion. It is therefore Sanatana, and any blasphemy against the Vedas is calculated to be atheism. The Vedas are described as Setu, which means a bridge. If one wants to attain his spiritual existence, one has to cross an ocean of existence and omniscience. The Vedas are the bridge by which to cross such a great ocean. Paragraph. Two more. It's long purport. The Vedas describe how to divide the human race into 4 divisions according to quality and working capacity. This is a very scientific system, and it is also Sanatana, for no one can trace out its history, and it has no dissolution. No one can stop the system of Varna and Ashram, or castes and divisions, for example. Whether or not one accepts the name Brahmana, there is a class in society which is known as the intelligent class, and which is interested in spiritual understanding and philosophy. Similarly, there's a class of men who are interested in administration and in ruling others. In the Vedic system, martially spirited men are called Kshatriyas. Similarly, everywhere there's a class of men who are interested in economic development, business, industry, and money-making. They are called Vaishyas. And there's another class who are neither intelligent nor martially spirited, nor endowed with the capacity for economic development, but who simply can serve others. They are called Shudras, or the laborer class. This system is Sanatana. It comes from time immemorial, and it will continue in the same way. There is no power in the world which can stop it. Therefore, since this Sanatana Dharma system is eternal, one can elevate himself to the highest standard of spiritual life by following the Vedic principles. Final purport, final paragraph. It is stated that formerly the sages followed the system, therefore to follow the Vedic system is to follow the standard etiquette of society. But the followers of Lord Shiva, who are drunkards, who are addicted to intoxicants and sex life, who do not bathe and who smoke ganja, are against human etiquette. The conclusion is that persons who rebel against the Vedic principles are themselves the evidence that the Vedas are authoritative. Because by not following the Vedic principles, they become like animals. Such animalistic persons are themselves evidence of the supremacy of the Vedic regulations. Pretty interesting. What to speak of the context. So this is chapter 2. It's the cursing and counter-cursing program. Da, 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 da. They should take the course in nonviolent communication. They don't know how to behave. And this is Brigu Muni, who's responding to Nandishwara, who's responding to Daksha, who's like, so Nandishwara, different than Nandi. Nandishwara is one of the leading personalities who are followers of Lord Shiva. And because Daksha spoke very nasty things about Lord Shiva, rather than Lord Shiva speaking, Nandishwara, speaks on his behalf and says, these Daksha people, although, so speaking ill of the Brahmana Daksha, and then in a broader sense, Brahmanas, and defiling him specifically, but in a broader sense, the Brahmanas who are so-called Brahmanas that have this and that, but they don't have the other things that are necessary for Brahminical culture. And Daksha was, so Daksha had his nature. And one of his nature was he really liked sex life. Really liked sex life. And he had a lot of daughters, and he had a lot of sons, 10,000 sons, 1,000 sons. He was a busy man. So, but, a Brahmana. So Nandishwara, in the defense of Lord Shiva, who had just been spoken harshly by Daksha, he spoke badly about the so-called Brahmanas. And Brigu was in the assembly, and Brigu heard Nandishwara, so he then curses Nandishwara, saying, you're going to fall to the position of atheist, and the fact is you're already in atheist position because you don't properly respect the Vedas. Like, they're not hearing each other. They're just like ticked off and saying heavy things, learned things, but they're missing a few foundational points. And that happens when people get angry. They lose it. They lose their footing. They lose the center and basis and support of what they're doing, and then they say harsh things to one another. That's what's going on here. So just stand alone, and both have their points. There are examples like this. There's one currently going on in ISKCON. Vaishnavi Diksha Gurus. Star Wars. They got their points. Kinda. Anyway, it's unfortunate. And they're right. He has to ask them. He has to ask me. I'm right. And and then there's the people in between that say, "Hey guys." Anyway, so that's going on here. It's not new. It's not going to stop. It's going to keep going. So the points that Prabhupada is making in this purport are kind of like so standard for points that Prabhupada would make consistently. No surprise. Nothing at all. The Sanatana nature of the Vedas, the Sanatana nature of the social structure, and then persons of these four categories of nature, like a body has a head and arms and torso and leg. It's just normal bodies have those 4 divisions, and each has their function that makes a whole body. And without any part, it's not the same. So Sanatana, and and specifically, then with focus goes to the Brahmanas, and the Brahmanas have regardless of what's going on, their duty is to be fixed in knowing what the Vedas say and uttering what the Vedas say. And it's so essential for maintenance of society, or saying without the other way, without such class of people, it's chaos. And that's what's going on. And Brigo is speaking, taken out of context. What he's saying is completely right, and therefore the conclusion at the end. Oops. Long purport. The conclusion is that persons who rebel against the Vedic principles are themselves the evidence that the Vedas are authoritative. Interesting argument, huh? Because by not following Vedic principles, they become like animals. And the reference is, these from Brigu, is these followers of Lord Shiva, they're this and that and the other thing. And they don't follow the regulations of the Vedas. They're not respecting the Brahmanas. And so they're outlaws, or they become like animals, giving the examples given in the purport. Such animalistic persons are themselves evidence of the supremacy of Vedic regulations, meaning those who are followers of the Vedas aren't animals. And those that are not accepting the Vedas, they're animals. And then, both sides are accusing one another in the same way. This is going on. The statements about Lord Shiva, we had some discussion on this before. We're going way back to Shivaratri. Sum it up, as we discussed, Shiva Tattva is very difficult to understand. If someone claims they understand, I'm going to say, oh yeah? Tell me all about it. Ganga Narayan and I have had some little discussion on this. Let's go back. Specifically the discussion was in relation to Anantashesh, and is Anantashesh Vishnu Tattva or an avatar, Shaktivesh avatar Jiva? And, thorough research with the help of Nandi Mukhi. And at least what I've understood from Ganga Narayan, he's now convinced that Anantashesh, this form of the Lord that's at the bottom of the universe, supporting the universe or the planets of the universe, is an empowered Jiva. And there's different Anantasheshas, and there's different, so the connection is that Lord Shiva worships Anantashesh. But which Anantashesh? Which Lord Shiva? It's complicated. It's not like straight. There's answers, but it's you have to be very patient and have a number of scriptural references right in front of you, and be so. I was going to remind you this morning, so I'm doing it now. There were 3 or 4 slides depicting, an image of an Antashesha at the bottom of the universe, and then the question, who is he, or what category is he? So I would very much appreciate if you could do 2 things. Well, one thing. Take those few slides and say some references with a PDF. Some references say this, some references say that, and a little conclusion on the first slides, and then with an attached PDF that says all the. Yes, Gorpanima is over now. Then it comes the next thing. Jagannath Mishra's appearance day. Appearance day. It says festival.
Festival of Jagannath Mishra.
What's the festival? Oh, the day after his birth. Big festival. Okay. There's many festivals. Okay, so back to the cursing, counter cursing. The point, the main point that better be careful how the language that I use. The main point is Krishna is the supreme person, and we should respect him. And the Vedas are the way to achieve that. And there's so many steps in between where we are and achieving that. And the Vedas are meant to help us bring us to that stage of realization of Krishna, remembering what we've forgotten, and respecting the Vedas includes respecting the Brahmanas, who are, by their very nature, they're inclined to study and understand the Vedas. Of course, they need to be properly guided in disciplic succession method, because otherwise, it's people who aren't really Brahmanas, and they're sitting in the seat as if they're Brahmanas and writing commentary on the Bhagavad Gita and other things. And it makes matters worse. So-called Brahmanas. And that's, in a way, what's being said about Daksha, but the way that it's being said is just condemning Brahmanas. And Bhrigu takes exception and says, I even if I didn't curse you, I curse you. But even if I didn't curse you, you're already there. You're already, an animal. Because you don't follow the Vedas and you don't have regard for the Brahmanas. Those two. And proof of the Vedas are aparusheya is people like you. Phew. Sensibilities are completely tossed out the window, just blaming and name calling and finger pointing and cursing and counter cursing. And those that do those, there's consequences for all of that. And so this is Canto 4, what to speak of what happens after Chapter 2 of Canto 4. It's messy. There's consequences for offense. And, coming up very shortly is Daksha's going to lose his head. And then the persons in the audience, whoa, you like, he can put his head back. No, you did it. Okay, we'll give him a goat's head. Okay, goat's head. And boy, was he embarrassed. I mean, how it worked with the goat's head, and he was living. We can't. Lord Shiva can do anything, I guess. So respect for the Vedas and respect for the Brahmanas, with the understanding that the whole structure, the Vedas, are eternal. The Vedas indicate the supreme eternal who we can't perceive, but by proper following of the Vedas, one can come to that stage of knowing and perceiving and experiencing. No, one has to be qualified. And to become qualified, there's a structure, a system. Qualified brahmanas are imperative for society in general, not just brahmanas that can do yagas to get what people want. Because the Vedas do that, but it's not just brahmanas that can do that. Perform weddings, perform this is and that's. No, those procedures are not inconsequential. What those who are Vedic follow those procedures, but following the procedure without understanding the purpose behind the procedure, it's fruitless. In one sense, you can say it's better than nothing, but is it? Just this morning, listening to a recording, Prabhupada was saying this point, same point as I just spoke. Supposing somebody is watering a leaf, and the water from the leaf doesn't get to the root of the tree, just water the leaf. The leaf, it's fruitless. Not how a leaf gets water. Now, you water the leaf, and water may fall to the root, and then the root gets water, and then the leaf gets water through the root. But if it's just the thing, the ritual and the procedure and the brahmanas, with mantras and so forth, there's no acknowledgement and mindfulness about what is this, like, what's life and why are we doing what we're doing. It's fruitless. Shama eva hi kevalam. That's strong language. Shama eva hi kevalam. Completely useless. Well, come on. It's nice. It's mode of goodness. It's not fruitless. But mode of goodness stays in the mode of goodness. It's fruitless. Humanitarian, Prabhupada's one of his favorite punching bags. Humanitarian work that doesn't have God consciousness at the center, fruitless. Oh, come on. It's good. How can you say fruitless? Fruitless in the sense that it's not going to produce what the purpose of that is. Nice. Mode of goodness is nice. So we respect that mode of goodness is nice, but it's fruitless. How can something nice be fruitless? People get whatever it is, medical, education, food, something, hospital care, something, education, something. They get something. But that something that keeps one in bondage is a fool's paradise. In that sense, fruitless. So how do you make something fruitful that's otherwise fruitless? The purpose. In one word, it's bhakti, that Krishna should be pleased by this. And, anyway, it goes back and forth. It goes like bashing each other. Well, of course, we know that God is this for God's service, for God's sake. Really? Who is the enjoyer of this charity or this education, or and whose happiness is it? And where's the eternal benefit for the eternal soul? It's when the curtain closes, that's it. You don't take it with you. The curtain closed. It's kind of like, it's not condemning, but it's, on the other hand, without transcendence, without having a sense of what the purpose behind. We can, and it's one thing to say it, then it's another thing to bhakti is to practically live that purpose consciously, or at least strive to be present with the purpose of each thing. Without that, it's a rough ride. With that, anything can happen, and that the place of safety and shelter and well-being is intact. Even through storm and so many things. The day after, I just comment. One of the things that helped me become a devotee was getting draft notices during the Vietnamese War, and everyone was against it. Young people, and and then draft dodgers and this and that. The day after this, from our president of the United States, anyone who turns 18, they have to sign up for the draft. Law. Day after. I mean, really? What's he thinking? Protecting. Really? Ooh. Without the purpose behind anything and everything, it's so easy to get lost in the crisis. We have to deal with it, but is there a place of shelter? And if you don't have a place of shelter, it's wild. Okay. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Gita. Any comments, discussion? Yes.
So, Guru Maharaj, my question relates to I think the second or third paragraph. Srila Prabhupada talks about the Vedic culture.
Uh-huh.
And so there are certain practices in the Vedic culture that in ISKCON we don't necessarily adopt. Right. And actually, I got this question at least 3 times from 3 different people yesterday.
Yes, yesterday.
Just yesterday, about this eclipse, and why do we have the altar open during an eclipse? Because in temples in India, the altar is closed. So there are practices that we have that may not be consistent with what other temples may be doing. So that's one. And then there may be also be practices within ISKCON that other followers of Vedic culture may not necessarily adopt, and which goes back to this controversy that you talked about within ISKCON.
Which one? Oh, that one.
The name that shall not be named.
Okay.
And so, what is our true north here? And again, these things would keep coming up. Is like, hey, why don't we celebrate blah festival?
Yeah.
Why don't we celebrate blah? Or why don't we do this? So, what is our true north? How do we? There's also a flip side to it. Sometimes, as part of outreach, you may end up doing something to walk across a bridge, and and then invite the person over.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to put both of those. Like, how do we don't get diverged to such an extent that we lose our identity and we are not really chaste, versus the desire and the need to reach out and be accommodative, and how do we balance that?
Well, it sounds like the same. It's not two things; it's one thing. I mean, you started with our practices that don't conform with what some temples do. That's where you started, because that was the questions that came yesterday.
Correct.
But now you're going into the second part, at least seems to me, is outreach and creating bridge preaching, creating a bridge and go across and not become watered down and become that instead of this. How do we maintain our integrity when we're reaching out to other people that aren't familiar or comfortable, et cetera, et cetera? It seems to me those are two different topics. At least, what's your favorite one of those two?
The first one.
Okay, the first one.
That's more
Bridge preaching. Then we'll leave that one to the parking lot. Okay. During Srila Prabhupada's presence, questions like that, like, what's our standard, came to him. I'll give a little, for example, because there was a text that's found in Chaitanya. This is the research that you're doing about Vaishnava etiquette. There's a text in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila that says, don't do this. And so I request that it be circulated. Don't offer obeisances to your spiritual master in front of the deity. Premananda was wondering, how do we enforce that? Because, when people come and they get some honor, a little bag that, for doing some service, they pay their obeisances. That's before the deity. So I just kind of went with that, but then there's some other then I heard a class. This is following what your question is for question number one. So I heard a class where Prabhupada said something different, and then so I reached out to Parma Karuna, who really likes Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And, he hasn't come back because he's been busy, I guess. So I requested Sri Radhika to, so she did the chat GPT, is that what it's called? And she got all these references, and I said, check, make sure they're real. They're not real. But the reference that she found real is from these biographies, and Prabhupada said basically it's inconsequential. What was the word he used?
It's
More or less. Oh, she's going to look it up. Anyway, so there's on this side, and then there's that side, and it's not important. It's important. This is from Prabhupada. Supposing I'm a Prabhupada follower, and he said it's important. Here's the reference. I'm a Prabhupada follower. He said it's not important. Here's the reference. It's 5 references.
it is a technicality.
Okay. And therefore the technicality need not be observed because it's a technicality. Now I'm this nice follower of Prabhupada, and I want to follow Prabhupada. And he said these 2 different things. 5 cases and then 2 cases, at least this little document that she's gathered. One is in his books. One could give the argument. The books is more important. We hear that argument. He wrote it. He authored it. And then there's a conversation with somebody that he said, it's technicality. It's not. So I'm a nice, back to your, if my intention, my plan of my life is to follow, then, and he says different things at different times, one in his books and one not in his books, or several not in his books, with the same message in the several not in his books, what to do. So, then if you're a bandstander, it's in his books. That's it. Dismiss the other stuff as secondary, tertiary, and it's in his books. That's it. That's what we do. And if you don't do that, you're not following Prabhupada. And that, tell that to the devotee that Prabhupada said it's a technicality. It's not so important. This is what's important. So tell that devotee, you're not following what's in Prabhupada's books. You're going to have dissension. So back to your question. How do you true north? And when there's some self-effulgent acharya like Srila Prabhupada present, it just goes to him. And when he says, that's it. That's true north. It's like Krishna saying to, in Mahabharata has examples. Yes, you shouldn't tell a lie, but if it's if the purpose of that lie is to save lives, that's dharma. I got a license. I'm going to save a life. I'm going to lie. So that's not right. So, back to what's true north. So it takes a person who, self-effulgent acharya, or those that are Brahminical and by nature are because they're Brahminical, they're very truthful, and they've had direct experience with our founder Acharya, who's no longer present, to go and ask. Then we rely upon those persons, and therefore these writings that document how did Prabhupada navigate and then decide and express in difficult situations. And that's it's very important. Those documented experiences are very important in the absence of the self-effulgent acharya to go to and ask. The pause is I'm thinking about the different voices on the Vaishnavi Diksha Guru topic. And it's like Star Wars. And they all feel right. So how do you discern what's true north? Back to like, a more it's a very prominent it's the culture of ISKCON going forward in time is going to be influenced, impacted significantly based upon how this issue gets resolved, if it gets resolved, or if it doesn't get resolved, then it's a split. Like there's the Ritvik issue, and then there's shades of Ritvikism. Without that's also very colorful. So it's a nice question. What's true north? That's the question. So we have our practices, and those who are like one question came up. Here's it. For example, one question came up. For those who are going to receive second initiation, should they also change their neck beads? Small thing, but what's true north? So Hari Bhakti Vilas, the scripture, and then the application of the scripture as how did Prabhupada do? And if you don't, if you have that access, so the question came up, and the answer came in Hari Bhakti Vilas, da. And in Hari Bhakti Vilas, there was no first and second initiation. And there was no gift shop that had neck beads for anyone. Tom, Dick, and Harry comes off the street and they like the necklace, and they buy a necklace because they like it. Anyway, what's true north? So the Hari Bhakti Vilas, and what was the practice, consistent practice over many, many years about initiations and changing them. So it's a detail, but it's a principle. How do you reconcile what's true north on that one? You don't change neck beads. That was the conclusion from the research that I did. It's an important question, and it's not easy discernible answer to that question. But practice is what happens in our temples. At least Prabhupada gave a GBC, Ultimate Managing Authority, GBC. And the GBC, bless their hearts, they established a deity worship ministry. And the deity worship ministry administers. They do, and they give advice. They set standards. And that's the standard that we go by. So if a deity worship question comes up, I ask to have an idea of what my experience is, but what's the deity worship ministry standard for this, that, or the other? So that's, is that perfect? No. Is that true north? Not necessarily. But that's how we live our life in practical terms. Like this thing of the deity door being open or closed, and it's in all over ISKCON for whatever the reason. When during class the curtains close and the door opens, sometimes it's really noisy, and have these, like in Vrindavan, big wooden doors, and everything stopped because it's a lot of noise. Anyway, it's a standard practice. That's standard practice, consistent with what Prabhupada did and instructed, and then followed thereafter. So that's the more or less true north for us. And then people come, they're not used to this in this temple, that temple in India. This is the way we do it. And if somebody wants to find out, that somebody that asks you, how do you respond to when that kind of a question? You can't give all this elaborate answer that I'm giving, but that's how it's done in ISKCON, and be happy. Yes, there are different practices and behaviors and rituals. This is our standard practice and ritual, our ISKCON, or broader Gaudiya Vaishnava standard. With deity worship, a fantastic example is the Radharaman temple. What they do, gold. For example, somebody that had been to India forwarded to me some, Valentine's Day decoration, and Radharaman dressed as Lord Shiva. And I thought, that's weird. And then I forwarded it around. That was a mistake. I should have checked. And someone said, this is what the deities were on those 2 days. Here's the photograph from the Radharaman temple. They didn't incorporate, Cupid and Valentine's Day and an American holiday in Radharaman. And it's so it was AI cuteness. So there that and during Prabhupada's time, that's the standard. He what was his name? The Acharya during Prabhupada's time, of the Acharya of the Radharaman temple. No, it's the current one. Before him, his father. Whatever his father's name, he did the deity installation for Krishna Balaram, because even in Vrindavan they accept him. And Prabhupada didn't want anyone questioning, was this done the right way, and all that stuff. Deity worship. He was in charge. I forget his name. And same, and it went passed on, and so it's the same. And deity worship, that's it. Gaudiya Vaishnava standard. ISKCON, some details perhaps. Starting with, Prabhupada allowed us or recommended because whatever the reasons. So that's one place. So There's somebody over there that did this temple, that temple. We have our standard. Here's the standard. And, you know, there's people that are practicing. I'm focusing too much on this one topic, but it's an important topic. Just yesterday, you know, someone came forward, you know, with enthusiasm, and they just bought a Chaitanya Charitamrita set, and they're already reading Srimad Bhagavatam. And how long you been practicing Krishna Bhakti? 1 year. I didn't ask the obvious question. What were you doing before that? You know, this is, you know, a mature woman. And then there's her mother, who's starting to chant 16 rounds a day. And what was she doing before she did that? Something. Are the standards that we do what she did when she was a little girl? Probably not. But, you know, then those are in a leadership position. And this is one of the concerns that I know that Premananda has, that the standards of how we worship the deity is really important, because it's going to pass on after she's gone. You know, whoever's going to be worshiping the deity, what's it? What's the standard on the altar and then in homes? Really important. What is it? What's true north? It's not just subjective. There has to be form and standards, but then there's the essence beside the form and standard. This is a very key topic in the whole discussion on respect. The whole section on form versus essence. Overemphasis on form, overemphasis on essence. And it's a mess. So what's true north? I mean, it's an important question. So therefore, speaking a lot about it. And we, those who are forward-thinking persons beyond the moment, you know, what's the future going to look like? That was, you know, one of the main messages. I'm sorry I'm spending so much time on this, but the Vyasa Puja message was preserving the presence of our founder Acharya going forward in time. And what are some things to do today to ensure that over a period of time it doesn't become unrecognizable, or it's a different experience for persons who come, which blends into the, you know, the bridge kind of topic. What's true north? Premananda, I thought you'd want to say something on this.
Yeah, I was thinking that
It's 20 minutes to 9.
it's okay.
Yeah. I'm just mindful of the time.
Yeah, I was thinking there are some things which are of much more greater importance
Yes.
than the other.
Yes.
And like the concern in the deity worship is something very important. But the eclipse thing, like the things that happen in India or other temples, there is some other reasons why these people do those. Like, for example, keep the food closed or keep the door closed. Some kind of a belief that there is some ultraviolet light or something is coming at the time of eclipse. I don't know how true scientifically it is. And based on such things, certain kind of systems have developed in other temples. So why should we even bother about those things while we have our deity ministry who is telling us clearly what to do and just simply follow? That's the way I'm seeing it. Sorry. Yeah.
Ultraviolet light, far out.
Something they're telling. I don't know if it is true or false, but
Is that what you got? No, that was.
My answer was very similar. This is what Srila Prabhupada has given us, and we follow Srila Prabhupada's standards. If he thought otherwise, he would have let us know.
Okay. Anything else?
Is
Yeah.
Is there time?
Yeah, sure.
So my understanding is that we're all wired with a certain psychophysical nature.
Yeah.
So we're Brahminical, or we have a Kshatriya type of nature, and Vaishya or Shudra. And Srila Prabhupada, my understanding is that wanted to raise us to the standard of Brahmanas.
Yeah.
So he's training us to be Brahmanas. So what does that mean, Guru Maharaj?
What does
To
it
be-
mean?
To have a psychophysical nature of, let's say, a Shudra, and to be Brahminical at the same time within the Brahma Madhva Gauriya Sampradaya.
It's elevation. You know, the psychophysical nature can change.
Yes.
Do that again? Sure. Another way of saying the same. By practice, it becomes second nature. So my nature may be a Shudra. Let's take a nice example. Jayananda. Taxi cab driver, building Rath Yatra cars, taking out the garbage,
Temple president.
yeah, just doing menial stuff. A laborer stuff. But he was, he became clean. He became, he became Brahminical. Here's a little Jayananda story. He didn't like to spend Krishna's money. So one time he got caught shoplifting because they had something on the and when he walked out the building, the thing, a buzzer or something, and they caught him shoplifting. I remember Tamal Krishna said, "Jayananda, why'd you do this?" It was not Brahminical. It's his intention was one thing. Anyway, he learned a lesson from that. You don't shoplift to save Krishna's money. So it may take a while to have the curved tail of a dog become straight, but by practice, it becomes second nature. A thing becomes second nature. And that's how. So, still inclined towards it cultivate your Siddhar. He was a Vaishya. That was his occupation. But at least Vrindavan Das Thakur described him as, highly Brahminical in honesty and so many other things, and Vaishnava principles. That's how. Anything else? Srila Prabhupada Ki. And Shatarupa, she wants us to take some Mahaprasadam. What is it?